Good afternoon and welcome to Around the Table live with Christian Concern. It's great to see you and have you with us. We are going to be talking today about the church and COVID compliance. And today we have two excellent guests from Christian Concern. Mike Phillips, who is legal on our legal team, often representing our clients in court. Hi, Mike. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon.
And we've got Ade Omooba, MBE, co-founder of Christian Concern as well. Hi, Ade. Great to have you with us today. So on this whole COVID compliance thing, there's always a lot of discussion about this kind of thing. We're not COVID skeptics. We know that coronavirus is real and people get sick and people we know have been sick with it and so on. But there have been issues with overly zealous interpretation of COVID rules and COVID restrictions. And we've got a good news story today and a less good news story to talk about today. Let's start with the good news, though, which is, Mike, that a street preacher who we supported was cleared of charges just recently, having been arrested by the police for preaching outside on Good Friday. Tell us about that, Mike.
Yes, so Joshua Sutcliffe is somebody that might be known to a few people. He is by profession a teacher, but he is also somebody who has been commissioned as an evangelist. And he saw it as his duty this time about a year or so ago to go out. And as he said, he was going on a pilgrimage. He wanted to go out across London, starting out in Hampstead where he lives, and walk a few miles and then come back and just really going out preaching with a few people, sharing the good news. And so he encountered the police on a couple of occasions. At that point in time, you might remember that the police were being very zealous in terms of their interpretation of the regulations. And he was stopped.
This is sort of Easter last year, is it?
Yeah,
so April last year.
It was April last year. It was Good Friday. And he really felt on his heart the right thing to do was to go out and to just bring the message of Christ to those in the street, because the churches were closed. Not everybody has access to the internet. And as a result, he felt that he must go out. And so he went out. He had a couple of encounters with the police, and they told him that they were going to fine him as a result of him being out. And he tried to explain that he believed that he had an exemption as a religious worker. But obviously that didn't carry too much weight with the police at the time. And eventually he was summoned to court. He pleaded not guilty, and we had a trial about a week or so ago. And he gave evidence and explained the fact what he was doing. And we just really tried to make the point that really, how would it be possible to, for example, reach the person, a homeless guy who we met on the way back, who he shared Christ with and then eventually gave his shoes to because this homeless chap didn't have any shoes of his own. How would that be possible online? Because that was the Crown's argument.
So just run me by that again, Mike. You're talking very quickly. I nearly missed it. He gave away his shoes.
He gave away his shoes. That's right.
And he gave away his shoes.
Yeah.
To a homeless man or something.
Yeah. So on the way home, after he'd finished his walk, he encountered a homeless man, and he just shared Christ with him. He was outside, begging outside a Sainsbury's. Number of other people were there, and the chap said he didn't have any shoes. So Joshua thought, well, I do have some shoes and I can afford to buy some more. I'll give him my shoes. And so he gave him his shoes. So that was just one example of the type of things that simply are not possible if you're just doing it online. And that's really what the Crown were arguing. They were saying, well, hang on a second, you can do this online. That's the way you should be doing it. It's safe that way. You can reach more people. Why would you not do it online, really, was their argument. But the magistrates heard the argument.
But you can't give away your shoes online. Yeah,
absolutely. So the magistrates heard the argument, and quite bravely, really, because a couple of weeks before his case, we had another case where we advanced exactly the same arguments, and they acquitted him. And they found that really he did have an exemption to these regulations, and which were built in there. Primarily based upon his Article 9 and 10 rights. His Article 9 rights being his right to freedom of religion, and Article 10 is right to freedom of expression. And, we still do have these rights, even though they've been curtailed as a result of these rules and regulations brought out by the government. we still do have the right, preachers do still have the right, and people who work in those difficult circumstances have the right to go out and to do those things.
Yeah.
So there we are. So he was found not guilty, which was very pleasing.
Fantastic. Well done, Mike, for that. And we generally have a very good record with street preachers, don't we? Largely due to your work, I think, Mike, isn't it?
Well, that's very kind of you to say so, Tim. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that of the street preachers that turn up, after appeals have been exhausted, we have had a 100% success rate with those preachers, because it's still, I think, regarded in the criminal law that most of really what they have alleged to have done really is relatively trifling compared to much of what the criminal courts have to deal with. And I think that there is a recognition there that even though people may be offended, that in and of itself does not mean a crime has been committed. And that really has to be the message, not just necessarily from Christians, but even non-believers need to understand that just because you say something that results in somebody being offended, that is not a crime. And I think that's
although I think I read this week, Michael, did you see this about the police actually recorded somebody with a hate incident for whistling Bob the Builder or something? So the police certainly think that these, what you say or even what you whistle can be recorded as a hate incident against you.
Yeah, it is very worrying, because even though you may not necessarily get a conviction for some of the things that some of these street preachers have said, there is a record which has been kept of hate incidents on one of the police computers. And so the fear is one day, what is under your name and what are the police recording about you? You may not have committed any offences, but nonetheless, the police may believe that there should be something put on your enhanced DBS check because of something that you have said. So I think that, there really has to be an understanding amongst the police and judiciary, prosecutors and so on, that it is not wrong to say something which is offensive to somebody in and of itself.
Yeah. And but you mentioned another case there, Mike. This is Andy Sadharavan, isn't it? Who was another street preacher who was arrested out on the streets last year as well, was it?
It was almost exactly the same set of circumstances. And the same legal arguments and the same legal team, but we had a conviction in that case, which is being appealed at the moment, and there will be an appeal heard in the Crown Court. But there we had, in fact, a more senior judge, not a magistrate, but a district judge, who decided that really she bought the Crown's argument that it was right that he should have been inside and preaching just online, and that's just as good a substitute to street preaching on the street. And so I mean it's a very worrying thought that really a judge can dictate to a Christian or to anybody of any faith as to how it is that they should practice their particular religion, particularly something as important as the Great Commission. It's one of the final things that Christ said was to go out into all the world. And now we're being told by judges that no, you can do it this way because society, I say, this is a perfectly acceptable alternative.
Yeah. Well, so we'll pray for the appeal of Andy there. Ade, what's your take on street preaching and how the police are engaging with this? You've had some conversation with the police about this, have you not?
Yes, and I've been having these conversations for a while. First thing I want to say is thanks to our legal team, Andrea, Michael, the whole team, great job consistently over the years. My involvement in that has often been to go and mediate to resolve things so that it doesn't go to court. In some cases, we have very tremendous success rate as well in mediating where we don't need to go to court and things are sorted out. But often at times you have to go to court and to deal with this. And yes, I always believe that you critique with a solution. And then also you engage in your, even in your criticism. So yes, I engage with the police on so many different fronts, sit on some of the reference groups just to give advice. And I often speak about the issue about the street preachers that, that our police on our streets need a lot more training. Because just listening to what happened with Joshua there. How do you give somebody a shoe online? It always seems to me at times that common sense doesn't seem to make sense to them.
Yeah.
Some things are just simple common sense, but then it doesn't make sense. Even at times, like what Michael just said about the other judge in Andy's case, that, even at that level, this is some of the things they're trying to dictate when it comes from those who say they are very intelligent or intellectual, and then it seems that the intelligence becomes dumb in some of their judgments and what they communicate. So my view always is that your as street preachers and Christians is Matthew 5, from 14 to 16. A city on a hill cannot be hid. You cannot be hid. You have been called out. You have been lit by God, not to be put under a bushel. What he says is that you must let your light shine so that all will see your good works, and glorify your Father who is heaven. That's what Andy has done. That's what Joshua has done. And I encourage many more like them to continue to do what God has called them to do. And don't let any of these things send them into a place of hiding, of fear, uncertainty. And for the likes of ourselves and Michael and Every, to continue to stand to defend the faith and challenge the darkness and stand with these people and these street preachers to let them know they are not on their own, that they have the body of Christ standing with them to see the kingdom of our God and Christ established.
That's great, Ade. And do you think the police might change their policies?
From my own engagement thus far, some of the senior police officers I've met with, even one of the deputy assistant commissioners way back, another assistant commissioner, even recently, some of their community engagement police officers, I meet with them even up to last week. I'm encouraged about the effort they are also trying to make to understand better, to engage, to see if there are possibilities whereby there can be a collaboration with the likes of ourselves and others like us to help educate and understand these issues better, so we're not wasting anyone's time or even taxpayers' money fighting things that we should not even be fighting in court. But it's a work in process, and often I say that I pray that our police continue to be well funded because we need them. And as the son of a former retired and late police commissioner who trained in this country as well, I've learned that you get the police you pay for. And if the police is not well resourced itself and well funded, you will find cracks. People will abuse the system there. But at the same time, we also have to ensure that we appreciate the importance of having them out there, but also holding them accountable and transparent in their responsibilities.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and we hope to see a change in policy there, the police. But Mike, what do you say to people who say, "Oh, I wouldn't have preached it like that"? Oh, they've that's not the right way to go about preaching the gospel. When some people talk about these kind of cases, what's your response to that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm always reminded of what D.L. Moody said when he said that I prefer what I do to what you don't do. And I think, they do make mistakes. We all make mistakes because we're all sinners and we're all fallible. And, it could be done better. I'm sure it could be done better. And there are certain people that you see that are absolutely excellent and that have a real unique ability to engage the crowd and to be witty, to be funny, to be sound. And they never get into trouble. Someone like Ray Comfort comes to mind, who has been at it for many, many, many years. And but the thing is this, not everybody is as good as him. But nonetheless, God still uses people who are still not quite as good. And as a result of these people going out, then they do meet people who really are in very difficult and desperate circumstances. And, even sometimes the Mike Overt, who's been prosecuted many times and always been acquitted, he's told me of many stories of individuals who never would have encountered or gone anywhere near a church but for the work that he has done, sometimes with others. And so sometimes you've got to look past sometimes what's being said and just really see the heart of these people who have a real desire to be out there and to share the love of Christ with those people on the street.
And you would encourage Christians, would you, who are thinking about getting out there and perhaps nervous about how the police would respond? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say that, generally speaking, most of the time, most street preachers are left alone by the police. And most police officers are quite reasonable. And so therefore, what we deal with is really a fraction of people who go out there and do that stuff. But what I would also say is this, is that do protect yourself, because people sometimes are malicious. People sometimes do make things up. And so record yourself, because if you record yourself and people make up some nonsense about you, and you've got a recording of yourself, especially a body-worn camera, then the likelihood is that there will be no prosecution as a result, because it will be dispelled very easily and you'll be on your way. Most of the cases that we dealt with recently, which have reached trial, have usually been because there's been no recording and there's still some doubt as to what has been said by whom and so on.
Right. Well, listen, well done with your work on that. It's fantastic work. And we'll pray that we also get a good result in Andy Sullivan when that goes to court of appeal as well. But let's move on now to another story, which is less encouraging so far, shall we say. You may have seen Reverend Charlie Boyle, a vicar down in a church down in, I think it's Sussex. And he's faced some anonymous accusation about his behaviour relative to COVID regulations. I think we've got a short video we can play of it, which is a great way to introduce the story. So can we just play that video and then we'll come back and talk about it?
Thine be the glory. I've been accused of singing the last verse of Thine Be the Glory on Easter Sunday as I'm leaving the service. And frankly, that is laughable. Thine be the glory. I don't know exactly who has complained, but it's potentially a clergy disciplinary measure. The fact that someone would report me to the authorities over this is quite upsetting, because I have been personally very responsible. Here are our COVID guidelines. We had our own track and trace. We had the QR codes. We put sanitizer in the church hall. I personally put these little red markers, and I've made sure that people have been safe. When I read the accusation, I just thought, this is a joke. You know what, on Easter Sunday, I can't pick up the cross and say, Thine be the glory, risen conquering Son. It was just an instinctive reaction to sing that song.
So there we are. It's in Dorset, not Sussex, Diocese of Salisbury. Mike, are you familiar with this case? Tell us how on earth did this happen? What is going on with the Church of England accusing him of potential disciplinary matter? That means he could lose his job and his house for this.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I mean, it's the kind of thing that sometimes that you would see maybe brought about if somebody has had an extramarital relationship. Maybe they've been accused of theft or something along those lines. And so in those kind of circumstances, it's just really unbelievable that somebody would face such a severe sanction for doing this, because he wasn't actually really breaking the regulations, because you can remove your face mask if you are the person who is leading the service, if you're singing in the choir. And so it doesn't even appear, even on a strict reading of these regulations, that
they even had a face mask exemption as well, I understand. So
yeah,
so he's got three grounds. He had a face mask exemption, and he was leading the service, and he was part of the choir, and there we are. And somebody complained, and the church lists that as inconsistent wearing a face mask as a reason for a potential disciplinary matter.
Yeah,
where you could lose your job and your home.
I think probably the real story is that Charlie has been somebody who had a very successful life. He was a qualified solicitor. He worked in the City of London, and he gave all of that up in order to run, a relatively small parish in the countryside, which he believed was God's calling on his life. And it's been extremely successful. And as a result, there are certain people who are not very happy with the success which he has brought, it would appear, and, have made these allegations. And it just doesn't really seem like a very loving thing to do to try to knock down somebody who has really put his life and soul into a parish in order to not just see the parish flourish, but also to see his community be blessed as a result of the hard work that he and his family have put in to that place.
And what are the other accusations, Mike? I think from memory, he'd put some items in the church, which turned out to be actually Bibles that he brought into the church. And there was another one. He did a sermon from a beach hut. And that was technically against the regulations or something. It didn't put anyone at risk, of course, at all.
No.
And he didn't realise he was technically in breach of regulations doing that.
That's it. I mean, I think that there was some other suggestion that maybe he brought along one of his children to a Thanksgiving service because he was doing the childcare that day as well. I mean, I think, these are such, they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel in order to get these kinds of accusations forward. And you just think, what does it count when somebody gives up, their lucrative career in order to enter an organization who then seems to persecute them for the breaching of the most trivial regulations. It's just, I mean, it is
an anonymous complaint. They then, you could easily say, oh, well, actually, that's not a breach, to walk down the aisle singing in that way. It's not a breach of regulations. An anonymous complaint, and the Church of England takes it seriously and puts it in formal writing on Darcy's headed paper, clergy disciplinary matter being investigated here. I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it? This seems so heavy-handed here against this vicar.
Yes.
Can I just ask? Is any of the archdeacons or any of the hierarchy of the church spoken into this at all? The Church of England?
No.
Okay.
No.
Not even the local archdeacon or something. Or not
well, the letter was from the archdeacon. And the archdeacon said, I've spoken to the bishop about this, and we're treating it as a clergy disciplinary matter. Now, interestingly, the bishop had visited the church earlier and commented specifically to the vicar, saying, I can see you've done very well making this a safe space, right? And being COVID compliant. So that same bishop, had said that to Charlie Boyle when he visited. And then the archdeacon said, I've spoken to the bishop, and here's the various accusations. If somebody's complained you didn't wear a face mask all the time, and this is what's happened here, right?
Yeah. Honestly, at times, I'm going to be very blunt about this. I don't understand what the Church of England is going to be eventually. Honestly, I mentioned common sense not making sense. Again, this is another scenario. Someone like Reverend Daniel, who again is fulfilling Matthew 5:14-16. He's stepping out there to believe he has a call, out of the very good legal profession, and then come to fulfill ministry and is doing a great job there. And people are seeing the good works and what God has asked him to do. And then it's his own denomination on a thing like this, and they make a big issue of it. There are other serious matters within the Church of England that they just don't even speak into. But you want to discipline a vicar like Danny? The Church of England needs to get its act together. It just seems to continue to rot, in my own view. Many years ago, when the Church of Nigeria decided to separate from the Church of England, I paused and wondered whether it was the right decision. But over the years, I got to understand why they had to separate themselves from Canterbury. It's for things like this. It's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. Even by the guidance, Daniel is exempted, and then you want to go and make a big issue of it. You want to turn into a disciplinary situation. In the house of God, this man is doing what God has called him to do. Even our own prime minister, not that I agree with him, when Hancock did what he did, the one who is in charge asking all of us to be compliant, now he's exposed for breaking all the rules he was asking us to comply with, the rules that he's penalizing people for, the rules that they are legislating to criminalize for. He's busy breaking it while telling everybody to be penalized for it. And when Boris was told, he basically said his apology Now, somebody who actually broke the law, his apology was enough.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ade, what's even worse is the Bishop of Manchester, when he was interviewed about Matt Hancock, said, I'm more concerned that he breached social distancing than I am that he's a man, as he put it, having a fling.
Yeah, maybe
right?
because he himself is an adulterer, he enjoys it. Perhaps he doesn't have the problem with adultery. You need to speak out and call these people.
But isn't that shocking? He's actually saying that COVID compliance is a bigger deal, more important than an adulterous affair.
Yes. That the sin is not an issue for him. That this is the reality of some of where these people are. At times, I even wonder: do these people have the Holy Spirit at all? Do they have a conscience, or do they just come into this role as another vocation? Do they really have a relationship with God? Because when you listen to what they speak, it's alarming. It's alarming. And I'm so happy that one is actually exposing this situation with Reverend Daniel.
Charlie Boyle.
Is it Charlie? Daniel, sorry, Charlie Boyle, sorry. Charlie,
yeah.
Sorry to call him Daniel. Yeah. To exposing it, it's good to put it out there. Because at times when you speak about some of the things that need correcting in some of our, establishments or denominations, you need to put something there for a real case like this, for those that deserve to see the flaws. And why, like I said, it seems that even common sense just doesn't make sense to them. It's too much for them to comprehend. And in my view, this man has broken nothing of the guidelines. And you still want to take him through that kind of a process. Like what Michael was saying earlier on, it's almost like with the police at times, they do certain things and then they leave some things on your record. And this, even whatever way this goes eventually for Charlie, who knows what they will put on his record, even if he's acquitted of it.
Yeah. And I think as well, Ade, of the Bishop of Liverpool, who only last month said openly he wants to see marriage redefined in the Church of England to include same-sex marriage. Now, the doctrine that he swore at his ordination oath to uphold, the Church of England doctrine, clearly states that marriage is between a man and a woman, right? So here's a bishop openly breaking his ordination vows, right, and openly advocating for immorality, and wanting to change fundamental doctrine. And is there any disciplinary measure for him?
But the point I say here is that
there's no discipline for him.
How can you then blame the government of the land when they don't respect any kind of guidance of some sort from the Church of England? They look at them and said, if you're the Church of England and you're meant to be the Church of the land, and you just what you just explained now about at the Bishop of Liverpool, no wonder they don't respect what they say. No wonder they treat them how they are. And that's why many of us and others have to step up in the land to speak out on these issues, more visibly and vocally, and consistently with scriptures. Because it's when you talk about either being hot or cold, which is best, at least we know where you are, but they try to be lukewarm. And even in their lukewarmness now, the agents of transformation have become agents of conformation. They are conforming rather than transforming, and causing even more confusion to a situation that is already alarming for many people in the country. Like I said, the mind boggles each time you hear these kind of things that come from the Church of England. You just feel that you're going to hear enough of it, and another one just comes out. I mean, it's a joke at times.
Yeah. Well, any further comments on that, Michael? Where do you think this is going to go from here?
His particular case, well, I would hope that as a result of the exposure that there has been from the media, that it may well be that people will say, what is this going on? Why on earth are we prosecuting this man? Whereas at the same time, as you said, Tim, there are bishops who are openly calling for defiance of Church of England doctrine. And I would hope...
It's not actual prosecution, is it, Mike? It's whatever it is, investigation.
Yeah, no. It could lead to, something further. But at this point in time, it is a CDM. And so we hope and pray that he will be allowed to continue in his ministry, because there are individuals on the ground who are doing amazing jobs up and down the country. And I know that, from my own local area, the local Anglican vicar had a real heart for for his community, for the local council estate. And so, that's the problem. It's a bit like in World War II, where it's lions being led by donkeys. And that's really the situation that we've got ourselves into, or the church has got itself into.
Yeah. So, so the other thing to talk about is we had so-called Freedom Day on Monday. I didn't notice very much difference, but we did. It was, a lot of the regulations did come off. And as churches meet again on Sunday, we meet free from regulations for the first time for, gosh, how many months is it? I mean, it's 15, 16 months or something like that. We're not legally required to wear face masks. The guidance doesn't restrict singing anymore. Ade, what's your church going to do to mark this occasion? Or what do you think churches should do?
Well, for me, there's nothing to mark.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing to mark, because as far as I was concerned from day one, I've always believed that the church stepping up to be the church of God in the land should have never agreed in any way to a complete ban on worship, which I'm grateful that morally we won in England and Wales, and also legally in Scotland. It should never have happened. It should always have been a conversation, just like with the politics, the science, and the health. They should have had that conversation with spirituality and those who deal with the soul of the nation to say, look, what can you continue to do responsibly in solemn gatherings? You see what I'm trying to say? And that would have been the case, and we will have, just like they've done with others. So COVID-19 is real. We've all said we know it's real, but crises are real. The Bible already told us these things will happen, particularly in these times, whether they are wars, pestilence, and all of that. But we deal with them. We still find ways, not in times of crisis, that we vacate the place of solemn gathering and crying to God. Even the Father himself, when things happen, he will call his prophets and say, call a solemn assembly, bring people together so that they can cry to us. So for me, Freedom Day for us as a church marked really nothing, because we've always continued to do what we had to do, the best we could do, and be elected. And in most cases, you've had us say
you must be looking forward to meeting without masks, Ade.
Was that mask? Well, even when they had it there was those who were exempted from wearing the mask. There's those of us who were leading who didn't have to use it. Then you still find many people struggle even to balance with the guidelines as much as they want to try and do it. But they tried their best. Like I said, they were reasonable to the best they can. And the churches in particular, like I say, were one of the most responsible, most considerate, and most consistent when it comes to guidelines. And so that's why I said to me, there was nothing to mark. It was almost just to say to the church, continue to do the best you can do as witnesses of Christ, and as the best example that you've always been. Right now, what we're dealing for the churches, if anything, is the fact that COVID was real, it came, but we kept saying to them that the issues that people face that we dealt with as church before COVID did not go away. COVID took the whole attention, while all those things were still there with people. And now that people are beginning to come out more, we are being hit with the realities of how so many people's situations have worsened over that time. And we're still now having to deal with the situation with COVID as people are coming out, but also now with all of those other issues they have that in most cases have worsened. And the church is still stepping in there to do that work. Someone like, going back to Charlie, like, for goodness sake, he doesn't need a stupid, in my way, kind of disciplinary that they're dealing with. He should be left to do what he does best now, because his community and his church need him so much right now, with all that he will have to be helping them, holding their hands to deal with what they've gone through in the last 18 months. And you want to start bogging him down with that? So that's where I am. I just feel that for me, I've always felt that freedom anyway, mentally, psychologically, to continue to just serve responsibly and the best I can. And I hope that the church will be encouraged to do it. I acknowledge the fact that many went into fear, uncertainty, confusion, even within the church. I don't underestimate that at all. Yes, but I'm just encouraging that we need to step up. And I keep going back to it, that Matthew 5, where a city set up on a hill, we cannot be hid. We need to step up and be that light that God has made us to be, shine it, and let people see the good works that God has called us to do, and glorify our Father.
Mm-hmm. And I can see some comments here from people saying that they haven't had vaccines for various reasons, sometimes very good health reasons or other reasons. And there's threat, isn't there, of bringing in COVID passports? Michael, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think it's quite a dangerous move. It's an understandable move, but it's a dangerous move because I think ever since really the Nuremberg trials, there was a recognition that nobody should be forced to have any form of medical treatment that they do not wish to have. And for example, I know, somebody in our family who used to work for Pfizer and read all the medical papers concerning the vaccine and found that they'd not done tests in relation to a condition which she had, because obviously with something which has only been out for about a year or so, and the average time that it takes to develop a vaccine is 7 years, there will be certain people who have not, and certain demographics within society who have not been tested properly. And so certain people do have quite legitimate reasons for not engaging. I think Christian Concern as an organisation doesn't have a view one way or the other, but apart from the fact that nobody should be forced to do something medically that they do not wish to do. And so I think that there is quite a strong line of argument that with the introduction of these regulations concerning healthcare workers, that it may cause quite a bit of hardship to certain groups within society. Now, and I think that is my own personal view. I don't know whether this is the view of the organisation, but my own personal view is that is a Christian issue that we need to carefully consider. May be done with the best of reasons, but there is a danger of overreach with these introductions of those kinds of regulations.
Well, I would say that I sat on a number of the roundtables with government on this, and I can say it on here as somebody who's on that roundtable speaking for the constituents that I represent. That when they were going to begin to talk about the vaccine passports and that. And we had a meeting, I think it was with Nadine Zahawi was on that call, I think, and whoever was advising the government. I raised a question then because I knew this was going to happen. And the question I raised then to them was this, that mandatory, vaccinations and things like that. And I was told, not verbatim now, government is not going to do that. They're not going there. Then I said, what about indirect, mandating people to have vaccinations? And so I said, what do I mean? When you start telling people they can't walk somewhere or they can't go into some places without having the vaccination, we are not going to do that. That's what I'm told. We don't see any reason why we should do that. That was just maybe a couple of months or so back or whatever. Exactly now is what is being done. And and I agree with everything Michael has said there. A lot of these things has been down to people being given the best information and the most honest and truthful information about the vaccines, and leaving people to make their own personal decisions, and then not trying to now compel them on the basis of their livelihood is a blackmail, almost saying if you don't do this you lose your job. That's what they're trying to say. If it's my work and you're not telling me that I can't work here except I'm doing this, what are you trying to do to me then? It has and it will open up a lot of legal cases. They better be ready for it. Whether companies or government, if they think they're going to just get away and enforce it, it will open another barrage of individual and collective challenge against this, about interfering with people's individual rights and human rights to make their own decisions on things like this. But again, I hope common sense prevails.
Yes, so do I. And I'm concerned about it. But I mean, the good news is, that interestingly, both Labour and Lib Dems have said they will oppose vaccine passports, and about 40 MPs, Conservative MPs, have said they will oppose it. So if that holds, then they wouldn't be able to get it through Parliament. And also, Lord Greenhalgh said that they would not apply this kind of thing to churches. But like you say, Ade, unfortunately, they keep changing. They say one thing and end up doing another. So, we will see how things play out on that. Listen, thank you, both of you, very much for joining us. And thank you, those who've been watching as well. It's been a great discussion. Always interesting stuff. And do keep praying for those cases that we've mentioned today. Do follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram if you're not already, and sign up for our weekly emails. And I look forward to connecting with you again next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.